Good morning, my friends, and welcome. This is Father Marcus from the Costa Blanca Anglican Chaplaincy, just spending a few minutes with you today. Hoping that you're feeling okay and not getting too much of the old COVID blues. Hopefully, this little message can bring a smidgen of joy into your life today. So, sending you love and blessings before we get going. Yesterday, in our prayers, we thought of Saint Martin de Porres. A Peruvian saint. He was born in the 16th century in Lima in Peru, and our diocese has a link with Peru, so he's in a sense special to us. He was born an illegitimate son of a nobleman and a freed African slave, and he has a sister, and after his sister was born, his father disowned the family. And of course his mother struggled, and Martin was having a tough time of it. Of course he was. One of the escapes from this tough time would be to enter a monastic house. But the Peruvian rules at that time were that people of mixed race were not allowed to enter. And the only thing that Martin could do was to offer himself to go in, as it were, as a slave, as a servant, go in and just do menial tasks, and even that was hard. But he did it, and he took on roles within this Dominican monastery. A lot of cleaning, a lot of work in the kitchen, a lot of work in the laundry, and after a number of years being there, he was seen to be devoted and faithful. And the abbot waived the rules and let him join more formally. Not everybody in the monastery liked that and accepted that, and some of his fellow monks turned on him, and he was called a dog because of his illegitimacy and his mixed race background. But he carried on. He was a man of enormous faith and enormous charitable works, and took on a whole realm of caring for people who were in need. There are many stories about him, many stories indeed, of how he looked after people who were desperately in need. And one of the things that fits with us is that there was an epidemic that swept through Peru at the time, and there were, in the friary where he was, a separate area with novices in, and they were locked up. And of those novices, 60 of them were desperately poorly. And Martin managed to get himself there. Although he wasn't allowed to go and the doors were locked, he managed to get there and care for these fellow monks of his and look after them. And then in the other houses where some of the other monks were, again, when there was lockdown, Martin was able to get amongst those people who were desperately in need and love them and tend them and care for them and look after them. And this was remarkable, and it's ringing bells with us at the moment when there is lockdown. We can't break the rules, but we can certainly offer love and care and support for people wherever they are. His abbot gave him a bit of a hard time, saying, you've broken the rules. And he said, forgive me for my error, but tell me where obeying the rules is more important than a life of charity. And the abbot let it go, and he was able to carry on. Martin came across someone living on the street who had been stabbed and was bleeding to death, and took him back to the friary where he was, to the monastery, and cared for him on his own bed and looked after him. Martin was also incredibly involved in looking after the poor, and he used to beg alms, and it was said that in a day he could beg alms and receive alms enough to support and feed 160 men daily. Incredible. And because of his work in the kitchens and his work also as a barber, and barbers and healers went together, he carried on that throughout his life, and would do all these charitable works alongside the jobs that he had. And he did incredibly well. The stories about him are so uplifting. There are stories that when he prayed, the room was filled with light, and when he got into a spiritual zone of ecstasy, he was so light that he couldn't even stay on the ground. There are miracles attributed to him. There is evidence that he was suddenly in places where the doors were locked. And interestingly, he could be in one place caring for a desperately ill person, and then almost immediately in another place, again behind locked doors, caring for somebody else. These are stories of a holy man. And this is what we embrace, this is what we love. Somebody who put the love of God and the love of neighbour before everything and everyone else. And without doubt, he's an inspiration. And he went through many of the things that we are going through, and he kept his faith, and he kept his love, and he kept his charitable works, and he looked out for other people, and didn't count the cost to himself. And people have loved him ever since. He's venerated in the Roman Catholic Church, in the Lutheran Church, in the Anglican Church. He became a saint in 1962, and his feast day was yesterday, the 3rd. Images of him show a dog and a cat and a bird and a mouse all eating together from the same dish. The idea of bringing everything and everyone together, and showing that different people can live in harmony. He's a patron saint of the Diocese of Biloxi. He's a patron saint of Vietnam and Mississippi, patron saint of black people, hairstylists, innkeepers. Interestingly, he's a patron saint of lottery winners, mixed race people. He's a patron saint of Peru. He's a patron saint of poor people. He's a patron saint of public education and public health and public schools, patron saint of race relations, social justice, state schools. Interestingly, he is a patron saint of television and Mexico, and here's an interesting one, Peruvian naval aviators. How about that? Because he could rise off the ground in that sense of ecstasy. Lots of stories, but all of them pointing to this holy person who was at that time excluded from so many institutions and things because purely his mixed race, and he was illegitimate. Thankfully, he and his abbot broke down some of those barriers and broke down some of those rules. And that was then, and this is now. But we need to remind ourselves of people like him who pushed injustice and embraced everyone. Great saint. I hope it lifted you a little bit. Go and do a little bit of praying and see if you can get yourself into that ecstasy. And even if you can't lift yourself off the ground, just feel a bit lighter, because you know you're in the presence of God. So bless you, bless you, bless you. Until next time. Bye now.